What's the one thing you keep telling yourself that you'll get good at someday? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can get good at any skill really quickly, and it's going to terrify yourself and those around you. For me, that skill was public speaking. I always loved just the emotive power that a public speaker has over an audience. And I've always wanted to be that audience member. Now, let me take you to my first public speaking engagement. It was a disaster. I got up there, sweaty palms, knees were shaking, and I had a minute to speak. And it was just, I just said something a million miles an hour, and then shamefully just kind of walked away. It was a disaster. It never came naturally to me. Now, a little bit of a backstory. I am the son of two Brazilians who had me and raised me in Japan, a culture that's all about don't make eye contact, look down, only speak when you're spoken to. It's not a culture of being boisterous and loud and saying, hey, look at me. That was my cultural upbringing. English is my third language. I went to Japanese public school, spoke Portuguese at home. And then when I moved to California when I was 9, I had to learn English. So I've always felt this massive inferiority complex when it comes to communicating in any language, because my native tongue is Japanese that I don't use anymore. The cultural language that is what I was raised in is Portuguese, which I don't live in a Portuguese-speaking country. And in English, there's tons of muck that I need to sort through. So I knew the odds have been kind of stacked against me since the beginning. But it's a call, it's a feeling. Watching inspiring speakers makes me yearn to go for that challenge myself. Now, despite all this, I kind of was reserved, didn't really want to articulate my thoughts, didn't really feel like I had a story worth sharing, so I was always very quiet. But at this point in my life, I was going through a career transition. I had spent most of my 20s kind of vagabonding. I was a big yoga hippie, didn't really have a real career or job. And I had gotten into software sales, but realized, hey, I'd rather be a software engineer because I don't need to speak to people. But I felt technically really incompetent. I felt technically like I wasn't really a coder, and there wasn't an opportunity for me to contribute technically just because I wasn't able to learn I just didn't have a foundation. But I saw an opportunity, and the opportunity was that these technical software engineers are terrible communicators. What if I just became the best communicator, and that could make up for my lack of technical skills? So I was doing a coding boot camp, and one particular teacher, his name's Sam, he was so boisterous and so public and just so a great communicator. And so I asked him, I was like, Sam, how do I become a better speaker like you? And he recommended that I open up, I don't remember the exact title, but it was a book that had Abraham Lincoln's letters and speeches. And he just said, spend 10 minutes a day just reading those out loud as if you were Abe Lincoln presenting it. And I tried. I would literally pace around my apartment, and I was reading these letters that were in very old English and didn't really make a ton of sense to me, and they were very confusing. And it really, the challenge of getting my tongue to say these phrases was kind of heavy. And I felt like, man, I'm not really getting anywhere here. But I did it for a week or two. And then I kind of graduated into, Abe Lincoln is a president of the past. What if I focused on a more recent president who is a good articulate communicator? So I watched a few Obama speeches and tried to find the best Obama speech. And I was like, I'm just going to dissect that Obama speech piece by piece. And I would literally, kind of like you would learn a song, press play, listen to it, go back, and then repeat what he's saying in the same intonation and fluctuation. I don't think that was very productive either, but it was an effort. Eventually, I stumbled into Toastmasters. I'd heard about Toastmasters. I had heard about how Toastmasters is a public speaking meeting. I had no idea what it was, but I said, you know what? I'm going to show up. I went to the first meeting, and to give you a little context, the way the meeting is structured, it's brilliant. There's an intro and an outro, which are pretty formulaic. Then there's a middle part of the meeting, which is folks giving a prepared speech that they have prepared beforehand and they're working on certain verticals. And then there's the part of Toastmasters that I really enjoy, which is the table topics, where there's a table topics leader, and he or she is responsible for coming up with questions based on the meeting's theme. So, for example, let's say the meeting's theme was about shoes. They would call a member or a visitor in the audience and say, okay, Augusto, or you, it's your turn. Get up on stage, and I'm going to give you a question, something related to shoes. And the moment you start speaking, you have 60 seconds to 2 minutes and a half to give a speech on that topic. And that's it. And I remember the first time I went up there. I don't remember what the speech was about. I don't remember what the topic was, but it was awful. I just kind of like raced through whatever I had to say. And then there's someone who's a timer who keeps track of time. And when that green light goes on, that means that you've spoken for 60 seconds. And I felt like I just was up on stage for 45 minutes. I'd given the speech. And I'm sitting there waiting for this green light to turn on. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to just keep riffing until this guy turns the green light on. And finally that green light came on. I was like, okay, done, done. And I sprinted off stage. It was, in every objective sense, a total disaster. But I'm a pretty shameless person. I was like, whatever, that was my first experience. Who cares? I kept coming back. And my only focus was, I just want this speech that I'm going to give to be a little bit better than last week's speech. So last week's speech might have been about, the topic might have been, tell me about your favorite pairs of shoes, or tell me about a trip you took on that changed your life. The topic didn't really matter, but my focus was on incremental improvement over what I had made before. And I just threw myself into it. There was no if, buts, or oh, I don't like this topic. I was just going to present. And in that process, I created this really formulaic template of, when I get the question, I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this. And if I do that formula correctly, I got to a point where I expected every single meeting to be the winner of the table topics. You'd get a banner for the best table topics. And I remember I collected them on a weekly basis. Shout out to the Metro Toastmasters Club in Salt Lake City, because they would be a present audience in which I could experiment. And I can get into some of the nuances that they really focused on, but I think the importance was just that relentless desire to just keep showing up, and not to measure myself against the others, but measure myself against myself. And this is a skill that I've taken into every area of my life. I had a pretty good career as a software engineer as a result of the skills I acquired in Toastmasters, because I was able to interview much better. I was able to articulate my thoughts on the job much better. Eventually, I co-founded a company and I was the CEO. I had to go and present to investors. I had to go to investor pitches. And that foundation of being able to quickly encapsulate an idea and articulate it to an audience is one that got me my first few hires, got investor interest, got our first few customers, was just my willingness to just constantly throw myself out into the void. And so it really doesn't matter what skill it is. And in fact, the bigger and scarier that skill is, the better, because it's an opportunity for you to grow. And one of the things that I think a lot of people get confused is that stage when you're really bad and you're improving at a rapid pace is the most fun, enjoyable part of it all. The part I struggle with is the incremental improvements once you've already reached a level where you're proficient, but you're not world class. But this approach of just being relentless and not caring about the outcome, but just doing it for the love of it, and just measuring yourself against who you were yesterday, I'm telling you, even if you only do it once a week, you're going to astound yourself at the level of growth you achieve in such a short period of time. And I think that is what brings life and joy into our souls. Is finding something, the struggle, and ultimately seeing the payoff in other areas of life. So whatever it is that you're looking to get better at, just throw yourself into it and watch the grace that flows into your life.